Hey everybody! So I decided to make this video out in the shop because I think it's such a nice place to tell a spooky story. I've been meaning to share some of my spooky stories, and I notice it's getting close to October, which is that spooky time of year. So maybe it's a good time to start sharing some of my spooky stories. And so, one of the earliest spooky stories I can think of was when I was about 5 years old. And so this would be around 1980 into 81 because this was our last year in Port Huron, Michigan before we left for Florida. And so I remember that year really well because that was kind of pivotal. It's like that very last year before we left. I remember how fun it was to live at that house and all the parties my dad had and stuff. So that on that particular night, I think he had some company, and they were, smoking pot and listening to music downstairs. And while I was playing upstairs, I was in the hall, just kind of looking down at my toy here in front of me, and that's when something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye. So when I looked over at it, I thought it looked like somebody shining a flashlight on the wall. And so what they were doing was, like, if I looked right at it, they would move like this, up and down. And if I looked away, they would just hold still. So if I peeked at it, it would be sitting still. So I had to look directly at it. It would move up and down. Looked away. So I was like, oh, that ain't nothing. That's just somebody playing with a flashlight, So I just thought maybe, my sister, might have been doing that. So I just thought it had to be somebody playing a joke on me, and it would be really easy to catch them in my parents' room because that's like right across the hall from my room. So I went in there, and I couldn't find anybody. And when I looked back over there, I could still see that light on my wall going. So I started thinking, oh, okay, I get it. They're probably just inside the door, and what she was doing was probably just pulling her head back just on time. If I looked in, then she would pull her head back, so I was pretty damn sure I was going to catch somebody in there with a flashlight. Well, I went in there, and there was nobody there. So I was in there with no light on, and that at that moment, I realized that that's not a flashlight shining on the wall at all. In fact, that is more like a ball-shaped object, like about this big. The outside of it was sort of self-luminescent, kind of like the color of electricity, and it was still kind of waving up and down like that. And of course, it was right above my bed. And the thing that made me think of was lightning. When I was that age, I was afraid of lightning. I was hoping that it wasn't, a piece of lightning that came to get me. I wasn't sure what it was, but it scared me so much that I ran as fast as I could downstairs to tell the adults that I had a hang on. Like right off the top of my head, I decided we're going to call this thing a hang on. And I don't know if it's because of the way it just seemed to be hanging in the air. It might be a good word for it in the long run, maybe hang on is a good word for it because it's like a spirit that's just hanging on. Didn't quite want to leave the house yet. So it could have been, the ghost that lives at that house and it was just hanging on and wasn't ready to go to heaven. So that's kind of a funny term that I came up when I was a little kid. I was really good for that, making up new terminology for things that didn't have words to them. So I had a hang on, and I didn't want to go back to bed and in that room ever again. So anyways, my dad had a good friend there that used to babysit us, and so she tried to put me to bed and explained to me that there's no such thing. All it was is, somebody's car going by and the headlight shining on the wall through the windows. And since it was the upstairs back room, that was impossible. I could tell she was just making something up to make me think, there's nothing to be afraid of. But the thing is it really only made it worse for me because I felt like, that I knew I saw something in there and I couldn't tell her, I couldn't get her to believe me or to understand what it was. So after that, I didn't want to sleep in there ever again because I didn't want the hang on to get me. So I ended up staying in my sister's room for a while until I got kicked out of there because I would, be up all night trying to talk to her and stuff. And so I was just too loud and obnoxious. I got kicked out and sent back to my room. And so, my parents probably thought that I'm just afraid of the dark and all I needed was a nightlight to fix that. So they put the nightlight in there, and I didn't see that hang on for a little while. So maybe so many days went by, or, enough time for me to forget about it. And then I seen it again. So this time I seen it, and it was after the sun had come up, and there was plenty of light in my room. And so I'm laying in my bed, and I could see it between me and the ceiling. So I covered up my head with the sheet, and then I peeked out at it, and I could see it kind of doing that same thing. It would wave back and forth, but this time, since there was so much light, all I could see was kind of a little squiggly mark, like I knew it was the same thing and it had that same color. but you could tell with all the sunlight in the room, you couldn't see the ball shape as much to it, and it really did seem like it was, maybe it was just waving hello. And so at that moment, I kind of realized, well, it's probably always here, whether it's light or dark. Maybe I realized at that moment it's something I shouldn't be afraid of. But yeah, it's kind of spooky when you see something like that in the dark. You got this little funky little chunk of light in there moving around at you. That's kind of scary. You know what that is. So that's why we call that stuff paranormal. That's stuff you don't see every day. And so like, I think we as a species, when we see something that's out of the ordinary, it's spooky because it could be dangerous. For all I know, that could have been a dangerous object, or and so I think it was probably harmless. It's the only time I've ever seen one of those, and now people talk about something called an orb. So when you see an orb, it's like this little, it looks like a ball with that glowing exterior. It's not like super bright, but sometimes you see little ones or bigger ones. Some people catch them on film. If you take a picture where there's spirit beings, they catch a lot of little orbs on film. So that might be what that was. So anyways, that's the first time I've ever seen anything, that spooky, and that may have been what sparked an interest in the paranormal for me. Right? Is that glowing ball of light that I saw hovering over my bed. So when you see stuff like that, it should really be a mind-opening experience for you. Hopefully that doesn't close your mind and you start to realize there's a lot more to life than what you could see and all that stuff. So that's kind of an exciting story for me. And I really hope people appreciate that, and that this provides confirmation in case you've seen one too. So anyways, as it's getting closer to Halloween, I hope maybe I got a few more spooky stories or stories of the paranormal to share. And again, anytime it comes to the paranormal and the unknown, everyone needs to have an open mind as to what the person sharing their story is telling you about. So that's like, I'm telling you what I saw in my bedroom to the best of my ability, and I might be mistaken about what that is. And in future cases, if I'm telling you a story, I'm telling you these stories to the best of my ability. And so I have to be open-minded to, like, whether I have it correct or not. You might have to be open-minded as to whether there's any truth in it or not. So I hope you appreciate my videos, and I will be back soon to tell you more spooky stories. All right, you guys have a spooky day, and I'll talk to you soon.